Gamecocks game day from Mission Control on a very early Saturday morning. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Captain Dave punching the buttons as well. You know, what we need when we do these 7 a.m.s for road games at the studio, we got sponsors. You just heard the sponsor list.
Yeah.
Right?
Long one.
It's craziness.
Yeah.
You know what's missing on there?
Coffee. Something caffeinated.
You're starting to get this after a while, aren't you?
So I drank a Diet Mountain Dew last night. That's got me still pretty juiced from last evening, so I'm feeling pretty good.
All right, yeah, fired that baby up. Yeah, I started with just basic a coffee ground sandwich.
Yeah,
and now I'm going with actual coffee.
You got to put the grinds in your lip like you're dipping it.
Just let it sit there and run through my body. All right, obviously we're getting you ready for South Carolina and Alabama. Bama 21.5-point favorite in this football game. 91% chance to win by the fancy computers, Tyler.
I don't think that's too much of a surprise. I don't see too many people on the game day desk picking South Carolina today. And, you know, lightning did strike once last week for Vanderbilt, but I don't know if it's going to strike twice for South Carolina today.
It's very rare that lightning strikes in the same spot.
That is true.
Twice.
That's what I always heard.
Yeah, and this is like we always look for the theme of a game or whatever. It's kind of what we do on these pregame shows. This one's easy. Which angry team is going to bounce back? Both teams not in a good mood after Saturday. Alabama lost a game that they should never, ever, 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 ever lose to Vandy.
That's a game no one in the SEC is supposed to lose.
Oh, we sit here picking the games before the beginning of the year. And it's not just us. Every SEC market outside of Nashville.
Even in Nashville.
Ready? They sit there at our sister station, The Zone, going, okay, Vandy, it's easy. Loss. Let's get to Tennessee now. And to the credit of Vanderbilt, they're a much better football team they were last year. They should have beat Missouri. If their kicker could be a kicker, they would have beat Missouri.
Yep.
They took out Virginia Tech, a team that has underachieved this year, but still more talented than Vanderbilt. And then they, in Nashville, stunned the college football universe by beating Alabama.
It's been that kind of year.
Well, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Oh, I am too. 07-5.
I was going to say, it's tingle in the 07.
That's right.
So, South Carolina, obviously, it's not that the Gamecocks lost to Ole Miss, Tyler. That's not the thing. It's how they lost.
Yeah.
It's you had a bye week and you came out flat. You came out, it was almost like, I don't want to use that not ready to play because that's a cliche that I don't think is, the team was ready to go play. They were prepared to go play. They just didn't play well. It looked like everybody slept late, or they just got, or Shane went in, after Monday or Tuesday, said, all right, everybody, get on the bus. We're going to Cancun. We'll get back in here Saturday morning for the kickoff. It's almost like they just weren't into it.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's no shame in losing to a number 12 team at the time, Ole Miss last week. It's just not looking competitive and basically the game being over by halftime, really before halftime, if we're being honest there, and just looking lethargic coming off of a bye week. And that doesn't instill a lot of hope going into this weekend. But as we know, South Carolina, especially under Beamer, has the ability to look like, a hot pile of you-know-what one week and a dominant team the next week.
And we talked about this, so I think it was yesterday on the halftime show, is whenever it feels like in the Shane Beamer era, everybody throws their hands in the air and say, you got no shot this week. You got no hope this week. Let's just hope they can keep it under 100. South Carolina goes out and plays with their hair on fire and it either wins or makes it a heck of a football game.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yes, I am, Lloyd Christmas. Yes, I am. So we will see what happens today in Tuscaloosa against a noon kickoff. We'll be here till a little bit before 9, then the SEC report, followed by the network pregame with Chris Miller and the crew, and then noon in Tuscaloosa, South Carolina, Alabama. And we'll get into what happened last Saturday in more depth here in just a little bit when we rewind it. But, with South Carolina, look at these two teams that are angry and the two fan bases and the media that's covering it. With South Carolina, you go, oh, great. Got an Ole Miss team that was angry after being upset by Kentucky. Now we get an Alabama team that's angry after a colossal upset to Vandy. In Bama, it's the end of the world. I mean, these people, Kalen DeBoer shouldn't have worn that shirt. They've lost their mind because, again, they're not used to losing to Vanderbilt.
No, and look, there's a lot of people in that fan base that have been looking for any reason to kind of turn on Kalen DeBoer because he's not Nick Saban, and they got a pretty darn good reason to do that last week. But look, that's a very talented team. Obviously, there's still a lot of 4 and 5 stars on there. Kalen DeBoer is a coach that does not lose very often, so that is an anomaly more than anything else.
And we have to get this in our head. It's one loss in an expanded college football field in the playoffs now. That loss will not kill Alabama. Remember last year they got a loss early and to Texas, and they went to the college football playoff. They got a chance to maybe get to a championship game. So all is not lost, even though they're losing their mind in the state of Alabama over that game. All right, so 76 degrees, no wind, no chance of precipitation. A wonderful day for football in Alabama today.
Yeah, that's about all you can ask for there. So weather's not going to be a factor. And for the Gamecock fans making the trip, even if the game doesn't end up the way that you want it to, at least it's a nice day.
And we'll break into this thing 50 different ways before it's all said and done on Gamecocks Game Day. First, obviously, the injury report is very important and vital. There are some names on here that we need to focus on. So let's get to Shane Beamer giving the injury report with Todd Ellis on Carolina Calls Thursday night. Hit it, Dave.
Fortune and Campbell are good to go. Credit to them. If you had asked me on Sunday, I probably would have said very not likely that they would play, but they've had great weeks. Campbell, love what he's about. He'll be fine for Saturday. O'Donnell's fine for Saturday. Jerry Brown, Jules, Hunter, and Solomon will all be out. Jerry Brown's got a little bit of a lower body injury. Hopefully get him back soon, but he won't be good enough to go this Saturday.
Wow.
All right, so Jared Brown will not go, which is a shame. We were just talking last week how you might actually have your wide receiver room healthy, but no Jared Brown. So you have Mazio Bennett. You obviously have Gage Larvidan, who looks like he might be bringing you something the last couple of weeks. And then is it, okay, no Jared Brown. Obviously, Bennett will play the slot. You're going to run. I mean, Campbell's coming from an injury. Is this a Nick Harbor day to start?
We've been waiting for it, right? Maybe this is the day that it finally happens. Again, like you said, Larvidan's kind of maybe emerging as the leader of that group after the 2 games that he's played so far, but still a lot of questions about that wide receiver room. And, man, if there was ever a day to have a breakout for Nick Harbor, today would be a great one.
Well, and it's really important to have O'Donnell Fortune healthy.
That is huge.
And we're going to get into this later, but the South Carolina defensive backs against the Alabama wide receivers, including the tight end, that's a thing today.
Last week was certainly a challenge with Trey Harris and obviously Juice and all the weapons that Ole Miss brought to town. This is about 5 times tougher this weekend.
And to be honest, there was some bust in that secondary. O'Donnell Fortune had his worst game of the year last Saturday.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it was. You got beat deep by Trey Harris. You slipped, and Juice Wells caught a crosser on you and would have scored a touchdown if he didn't reach the ball out and DQ Smith knocked it. And then you had the other issue that Fortune had on the pass interference. So O'Donnell Fortune had a rough Saturday. And hopefully he can bounce back because the dudes running out to play wide receiver for Alabama, we'll get into it later.
One in particular.
Yeah, buddy. All right, it's Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Ortho, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, David Dare. We are hanging here really early at Mission Control in Columbia. We'll come back and take a little look at what happened last Saturday against Ole Miss as we rewind, and also we'll visit with ex-Gamecock Ryan Brewer. It's all coming up. Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Ortho on 107.5 The Game. Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by Lexington Medical Ortho. Rewinding in this segment of last week's 27-3 loss to Ole Miss. Not going to lie to you, Tyler, it was slim pickings in the highlights.
I was going to say it's telling that we have a punt and then the other team fumbling going into the end zone as the two highlights from that.
Wasn't a lot to choose from. Dave was funny because Dave sends the email out because, we make Dave, we basically chain Dave to the producer studio all day today. Dave pulled the highlights and Dave sends the email. We got nothing. Yeah. We got nothing.
Well, at least the one highlight they did kick the field goal and scored. So there's
the field goal.
They didn't get shut out.
The interesting thing is the fan base, when the field goal gets kicked, the fan base was like, eh.
Yeah.
Usually you cheer for any points, right? You're on the board now, right?
Yeah.
Fan base went, ugh.
Well, you were down 14-0 at that point in time after you had basically handed Ole Miss two pretty short fields that they turned into touchdowns. So you think, all right, if you go down and score a touchdown, make it 14-7, we got something here. You got a field goal.
Because a touchdown, you feel like, okay, we're back in the game. We got some momentum. Look, the game started off, you have a 4th and 1. And we're around your own, what was it, 34, 35, Tyler? You were around your own
36,
30,
I believe.
36.
Yeah.
And if you want to go for it on 4th and 1 because you want to be aggressive, Ole Miss is explosive, and you feel good about going for it at that point, okay, fine. I get you.
I think everyone would agree with that.
Everybody be like, okay, whether I agree or disagree with that decision, I see why you're doing it, right?
Sure.
And the analytics, we've had fun with this. If you look at an analytic chart, it says go for it on 4th and 1 everywhere on the field.
Yeah, if you're on your own 1 yard line, go for it.
That's what analytics say because it's about numbers and probabilities, right?
Right.
So I get going for it on 4th and 1. Now, to be honest, for me, I've thought about this. The decision is to what's the best unit on your football team?
Your offense?
No, your defense, right?
Yeah,
South Carolina.
Yeah, for defense.
For South Carolina, it's your defense. On 4th and 1, inside your own 40, is it smarter to punt it, play a little field position because your punter is second in the SEC in yards per kick? Mm-hmm. Is it smarter to kick it, put Ole Miss maybe inside their 20, put your best unit on the field, and start playing a little field position early in the game? That's the other thing you could have done if you're Shane Beamer.
Ideally, because they did get the 3 and out to start the game.
So there's the thought of that. But if you want to go for it on 4th and 1, I get it. But here's my caveat is, keep your offense on the field and go for it on 4th and 1.
You have a quarterback that's, 6'3"? He only needs a yard. Okay, do something with that.
And right now, your strength is him running the ball. And put him out on an RPO type thing or get him out in space where he can throw it or run it, right?
Yeah.
Short snapping to your 4th string tight end.
Who's 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, running into a pile of human beings is probably not the way to go about it.
Well, and Shane alluded to it. They had seen something in tape all week about Ole Miss not being set at the snap for a lot of their punts, and they got the look they wanted, but they waited too long, and then guess what? Ole Miss got set, and that's where he should have called the timeout.
And Ole Miss had their base defense on the field, by the way.
Yeah.
Up front. And that's what Shane said. If you heard in the open, I should have called a timeout, and he's right. He should have. And I appreciate the honesty and transparency on that from Beamer saying, I'm kicking myself over not calling the timeout. Because that once they're set, it becomes a foobar.
Yeah, you're not going to be successful.
So, also in this football game, then you have the fumble, and once you have the fumble, and just in that situation, it's not like you get hit. You're basically running the mesh. You bring the ball back, you go to take off, and no one hits you and you fumble.
Yeah,
and then Ole Miss gets the ball, and it's now 14-0. And it's just gone downhill from there.
And I know you weren't in the press box last weekend, but you could kind of feel the air go out when that happened, and Ole Miss turned that into a touchdown. I know it was in the first quarter, but I think a lot of people kind of thought the game might be over at that point, and it kind of was.
Yeah, and I get it. Look, Robbie Ashford, he had a heck of a game against Akron. His legs are his weapon. You want to bring him in with a little package of doing something. And really, there was daylight to run the ball, to pick up 4, 5, 6 yards, maybe more on that play, because there wasn't a defender in the hole.
Well, let's think about it like this. And Rocket Sanders got hurt earlier in that game against Akron. They've not been on the field together a whole lot. I know Robbie Ashford's had to come in relief of Sellers, and there's been a few plays here and there, but the cumulative snaps those two guys have spent on the field together, not a whole lot. So there was a high likelihood there could be an issue there.
And so you're down 2 scores already. and you get the ball inside the 50-yard line 7 times if you're South Carolina.
They brought that up several times this week.
And you scored 3 points.
Yeah.
And the reasoning, those multiple ones, you got stopped on downs, you had penalties, you had turnovers. Basically, you hurt you as much as Ole Miss hurt you. And Lennar Sellers was a mixed bag. Had some. Obviously, we saw him with his legs. A couple of plays with his legs. He had the longest. The only explosive play they had was the 30-yard run.
Right.
He made some good throws, but he made some head-scratching throws. He missed Gage Larvidan for a touchdown on the possession where he threw the bad pick into double coverage, where he did not look off any of the DBs. He just locked on the receiver and threw into double coverage.
And there is something to be said, the fact that he missed the entire last game, so that's one less game of experience that he could have had against a lesser opponent in Akron, and, had just not played a lot of football in the past 2.5 weeks. So maybe there's a little bit of rust to that, but there's also the, development process where he was going up against probably the best overall defense he's faced so far this year, and certainly looked like it.
Now, again, it was a mixed bag defensively. Jackson Dart barely hit half his throws.
Yeah, he wasn't having a great day.
When he hit some throws, he hit some throws.
Yeah, and he has a lot of weapons around him. When you get the ball in those guys' hands, they're going to make plays, and we certainly saw them do that on Saturday.
Ole Miss had 4 passes of over 20 yards. They had some explosives. Again, there was some issues.
I dropped about 3 or 4 others.
Yeah, so Ole Miss had some plays down the field because that's what they do. And again, fast forward that to today because Alabama likes explosive plays.
Yes, they do.
All right, it's time. Let's get our buddy Ryan Brewer really early in the morning. A little time with Brew here on Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by Lex Med Ortho.
Time to hear from former Gamecock Ryan Brewer on Gamecocks Game Day.
Gamecocks Game Day, time for a little brew early in the morning. Hey, what the heck? We're live at a tailgate in Tuscaloosa, you and I.
Yeah,
Why not?
It's early, man.
It's really. I haven't cracked a beer this early in forever. I don't think I can do it anymore.
That's not true for me, so
You're a better man than me. My prime's so far, it's so sad. I had like 2 Modelo's like a couple weeks ago. I was ready for a nap in the car. I'm so sad. Ryan Brewer, sir, let's talk about, because, you guys were, look, you had a lot of success when you were playing with Lou, obviously, and you guys basically turned around a program. But obviously you would have games where you lose, you didn't play as well as you were hoping, maybe you came off a bye and were flat, whatever the case. Is it as simple as saying, watch the film, learn from it, burn it, move forward? Is it that simple?
It is. It is for me. It is for some players. It is for a lot of guys that have that short-term memory of goldfish type deal. But a lot of guys, it's not that easy. And also depends on what you're making mistakes on. Is it something you can learn and actually improve on? A lot of things that's just how I'm doing right now. That's my flaw type deal. So it really all depends on the individual, what position, what they're doing wrong. But yeah, there's definitely times where you had a bad game, and it can go throughout the whole team too. Momentum. We are a very momentum team. We're a team that if we make a mistake, i.e. the fake punt and don't get the first down, that the heads start dropping, and then the next series you fumble, then they really start dropping. And now, offensively, that's a big hole to climb out of. And, that's something that just can't. You can watch film and drop all you want, but it really comes down to what you do next Saturday. Can you drop that, learn from it, get better the week, and then go on the field and produce Saturday.
Interesting you bring that up, the early in the game, the missing the 4th and 1 when Maurice Brown, catches takes the snap and tries to pick up the first down and gets stuffed. And then Robbie Ashford, with no one hitting him, just loses the ball after working the mesh point. This team has 38 seniors. Second most in the country, I think they said during the broadcast. With that many vets, would it surprise you to see dudes hanging heads when you should have enough guys to go, guys, we're all right. Let's keep playing. We're good here. Long way to go.
Yeah, you have a lot of vets, but not a lot of vets that are in starting roles on the field. Yeah, but on the defensively, yes, you have the guys that didn't get the heads up, and it's kind of hard. Defensive guy, you could, in exchange after a fumble, hey, Robbie, man, Debo goes, get your head up, we got you type deal. Mm-hmm. And that could be a big deal. If the defense then stands up and comes off, say, look, no harm, we got you, nothing happened. That's huge, especially for a senior coming out, or D-line, all the guys you have there with Boogie and talking and stuff that can say, guys, keep your head up. We're gonna protect you in this time. We got your back. But when you get scored on, then it becomes even harder. Mm-hmm. As you said, the hole coming out of. But as leaderships, it's tough. You have receiver wise, you have Doty's really the only senior, that's been the Garnet and Black that can maybe talk to the receivers and try to get them going. A lot of guys are younger or transfers, and it's just a different era now with the transfers and all that stuff, and who is a leader, how long you've been here. You can be a senior transfer guy, but you've only been here for 6-8 months. Are you really a leader? And it really depends on what kind of person you are.
Ryan Brewer, a little bit of brew. Gamecocks game day, getting you ready for South Carolina and Alabama in Tuscaloosa, noon kickoff right here on the game in Columbia and also Myrtle Beach. You bring up an interesting point about this world. And let's go offense, because you're talking about hanging heads. Larvadan is a senior. Campbell's an upperclassman. I'm trying to think of all these guys that have come in on transfer. Rocket Sanders has been around for a long time. Josh Simon is a 5th, 6th, 10th, 15th year guy. I've lost track. But you make a good point. Yeah, you might be a vet, but you ain't a vet here, and you ain't a vet in the SEC. That's a bigger deal than we think about, isn't it? Or could be.
I think it could be, depending on your locker room and how the dynamic there. I think Simon's a guy that, like I said, has been around for a long time, and you would think a guy's coming in, they're looking to him, as a thing. Because you just walk in somewhere, no matter what you are, even if you're an older guy, into any bar, in any room or whatever, you're not all of a sudden a leader because you're older. Mm-hmm. You got to prove yourself. And, you had limited time as a transfer guy to come in and prove yourself. And that's not just on the field. That's just as a person, as what you show, how hard you work off the field, and how hard you work at practice, things like that. That people say, all right, I can actually follow this guy because of his actions. Mm-hmm. And it's just harder for a guy that hadn't been here that long to prove himself. And that's and then with Rocket with injuries, that's hard for him to say, hey, I'm a leader, because he hadn't been out there doing it. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm just saying there's a lot of different dynamics going on when your transfer's coming in with time and injuries and things that you just don't have all that, the tangibles there to say, hey, I'm a leader just because I'm an older dude.
All right. I've heard the Ryan Brewer stories. Legend is you played at South Carolina.
Yep. I think so. Yep. Okay. Sure. Yes. Right. Yeah. I had to think about it. Yeah. That's right.
Now, you were a leader. I mean, we have fun with you and Joe Crown, but you were a leader on that football team. When did you become a leader? Or did you even know when you became a leader? Or is it just something that evolves?
No, you do what you think's right. You do what you're supposed to do out there, and then it happens. I don't know when quote unquote a leader came in, but I would think when I stepped foot on campus, I was trying to do what I was supposed to do to be on that football field, and to prove I wasn't really trying to prove myself. I just thought that I had to work this hard, whatever hard that was, and I would look at, in crazy part, I would look at O linemen, D linemen, guys bigger and stronger than me, so I want to be stronger than them. I want to be faster than the DBs. And I wasn't most of the time, but I was trying to get there.
Right.
Right. So working that hard, then all of a sudden people start seeing that, and it becomes a competition. Mm-hmm. Everything's a competition. So then all of a sudden you have, all right, this guy's working this hard. Then I had a guy like Rashad Faison, who was that was one of my brothers. He off the field, we competed so hard, like who could do the most push-ups, who sit-ups, who's running the fast, doing whatever. But then everyone else starts getting involved in it. And when everyone else starts doing that, it's like, all right, we're going to follow these guys. They're competing to be the best. I want to be the best. Mm-hmm. So all right, everyone wants to be the best. And that's when you start getting that mentality. Everyone's working harder. You start doing that in the off season. You do it in practice, and hopefully it all goes onto the game field.
Ryan Brewer, a little bit of brew, getting us ready for Gamecocks, Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa, noon kickoff right here on the game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. All right, two things for you. A, this football team, 3-1, went into a bye feeling good, smacking Akron all over the place, should have been 4-0. Come out of the bye, and it just, is that the best way to describe it?
That was a pretty good one, yeah.
Oh, you like my professional
term. I looked that up in the thesaurus here in a second.
How surprised were you they came out and played the way they did and started the way they did coming out of a bye? Or as we make too much of that?
No, I think we're not making enough of it, honestly. I mean, it's a bye week. You had to prepare for this. Yes, Ole Miss just lost to Kentucky. They're trying to prove something because they think they're a playoff contender, which is we were in the running for the playoff contention as well. This is something we don't really talk about because we're South Carolina. We shouldn't be there. Heck yeah, we should be there. Mm-hmm. So you have all these things going for you, and you come out there and offensively you lay an egg, and that's it. It hurts internally. It hurts for me mentally to sit there and go, wait, what's going on? Why couldn't we prepare something better against this team? And especially when you have a defense like that we have, which showed out in the second half. And that yes, you should have scored that one touchdown, but other than that, we held them pretty strong. Now we put them in bad situations offensively, and that's things we cannot do We don't have a good enough offense to put our defense in bad situations. We can't turn the ball over. We can't, we can't take up 6 sacks for negative 4,000 yards. We can't do that kind of stuff. We got to keep putting our defense in good situations because they'll stop them, put our offense in better field positions so we can get field goals and try to get touchdowns.
Last thing for you, what concerns you the most coming from Saturday?
Still that we're not getting better protection-wise and any push on the O-line. The O-line is not getting where I thought we would be. I really thought we had a solid O-line this year, and we've shown some improvements, but that was a big drop. A big, we're just not just a sack situation, but we're still not getting first downs where we're getting positive yards. Second down, we're getting positive yards when we're running the ball, and just not consistent. And that's if you're going to win a ball game, especially in the SEC, you got to have an O-line that gets some push.
All right, I've heard of this place called Ryan Brewer Fence. Have you ever heard of it?
I have. We're going about 20 years will be next year.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I had to do the math. You see the math I just did in my head?
your skull's on fire.
Yeah, I just hurt myself with that one. But yeah, almost 20 years I've been running a fence company, and it's just everyone's a fence company. But we do anything from your commercial, your hotels, your condos, your to your residential stuff. So any privacy fence for your personal house or ornamental fence for a pool. We do all that. Temporary fence. We got a whole nother division just for that. Then we got custom work for anything. Like I said, your heart desires, we can build it. You give us a picture of something on Etsy or whatever it is, Instagram, whatever, and we can build it. So RyanBrewer.net.
RyanBrewer.net. Ryan Brewer, former Gamecock. A little bit of brew, getting you ready for South Carolina and Bama. Appreciate you, my man.
Yeah, man. Go Gamecocks.
We'll come back, go behind enemy lines. Check out the Alabama Crimson Tide next on Gamecocks Game Day on 107.5 The Game. That's Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer post-game after the wreckage that was a mind-numbing loss to Vanderbilt last Saturday. The Tide now number 7 in the country. Alabama, by the way, was number 1 in the nation.
They were for
when they lost
a
to
whole
Vandy.
week.
Yep. Coming off that big win over Georgia, losing to Vandy. Bama's now number 7 in the country, 4-1 overall, 1-1 in the SEC. The Billy Connolly SP Plus rankings for Bama, number 3 overall in the country, the number 1 most efficient offensive team in America. Number 16 on defense, and we'll get to that in a minute. And special teams, again, South Carolina isn't as limbo-y as they've been before, but Alabama is 91st in special teams in the country. Maybe that's where South Carolina can pull off something later on today. Also with Alabama, the development of Jalen Milroe. This is so interesting, Tyler. Milroe last year was an all-or-nothing passer.
Yes.
He could hit big plays down the field after big play down the field, but throwing in the intermediate area, he wasn't very good. This year, now Milroe's still hitting the ball down the field. 20-plus yards, he's hitting 57%.
Yeah, that's where 7 of his 11 touchdowns have been on the explosive plays.
Explosives down the field. But this year, in that 10 to 19 range, the sweet spot of the passing game, Milroe's hitting 68% of his passes.
Yeah, that's up from 52 a year ago, and that was the one area that he certainly struggled with. So he's come along well as a passer. And we saw that progression happening as the season went along, but that was still an area that he needed to improve on. And, credit to Kalen DeBoer and everybody on that offensive staff for making those improvements, Tim, because he is now a more well-rounded quarterback that had the opportunity to play at the next level now.
And he's got some weapons. Starting off with that, and of course, no one's tired of hearing this. The 14-year-old Ryan Williams, the freshman.
He gets younger every week. It's weird.
Yeah, he rides his bike to the game.
Got a little pinwheel hat on.
Ryan Williams is averaging almost 30 yards a catch.
It's insane.
I mean, he makes plays all over the field. He gets open. When you throw it to him, he catches it. And when he gets it in his hands, he's really, really hard to tackle.
He might end up being better than Julio and Devonta Smith and Amari Cooper and all these great wide receivers that Alabama's had over the years. He might be the best of them all when it's all said and done.
But you also have the Bernard kid who transferred from Washington, who is a nice number 2.
Yep.
And then another guy, look, you got to keep your eye on C.J. Dupree, the tight end transfer from Maryland. Dupree can make some plays in the passing game. If you're too locked in on the receiving core of this team, Dupree can beat you in the middle of the field.
Yeah, he's an NFL caliber tight end. And again, you got threats at every single level. Again, Ryan Williams, kind of the deep play guy. Jeremy Bernard's kind of the guy you can get catches in the middle of range. And then Dupree can make plays all over the field as well.
And it's so funny. They even have other guys who you don't even know who they are that could make a play in the passing game at wide receiver. The kid Prentice, I think they've thrown him 9 targets. He's caught 8.
Yeah, he's a little bit questionable going into today, so we'll see how that affects him. Kendrick Law as well. But again, as you expect, Alabama's got a depth of targets at the receiving spot for this team.
And by the way, when it comes to getting after Jalen Milroe, he's been pressured on only 29% of his dropbacks. And by the way, when you do pressure him or you blitz him, his numbers are filthy. Yeah. So it's almost like you can't unlock the code to this guy because he can beat you with his legs. He's now efficient all over the field throwing it, and he's not being pressured. And when he is pressured, he still kills you. Yeah,
South Florida is the only team to sack him more than twice so far earlier on the season. That was the one game that he, was under 70% completion. So when you do get more pressure on him, his completion percentage does go down, and it does affect him a little bit. But that's going to be a tough test for South Carolina today.
Yeah, and a couple of the quick matchups. Well, first of all, before we get to the matchups, the thing about Alabama, because one of the biggest problems with South Carolina is giving up sacks and pressures. Alabama's not getting after quarterbacks. They're 13th in the SEC with only 10 sacks in 5 games. They have 2 dudes we got to keep our eye on, though. We're going to get to those guys in a minute.
Sure.
And also Alabama has the South Carolina disease. Bama's 12th in penalties in the SEC.
Yes.
They had 2 personal foul penalties that helped Vanderbilt go down the field and end up in a touchdown drive.
Yep.
So Bama, they also could inflict some wounds to themselves. And in the last 6 quarters, obviously, they've been carved up.
You're telling me it's going to be a long game today?
It could be a long game. 2 quick matchups. Obviously, the Alabama wide receivers against the South Carolina DBs. O'Donnell Fortune, Judge Collier, Jalen Kilgore, Nick Emanwari, DQ Smith, maybe even Knight at linebacker. You got to cover today. And Jam Miller's another guy, the running back, who has been he's got his own share of explosive plays this year. Yeah. So Alabama's also got guys in the backfield at running back who can hurt you, whether running it or catching it. So a lot of those guys are going to be very important for South Carolina. And here's the other big matchup. Quindarius Robinson and LT Overton, the two edge rushers for Alabama, have a combined 27 pressures. The South Carolina tackles, Josiah Thompson and Kason Henry, have given up 28 pressures.
I feel like it's going to be a long day for those two guys.
Yes. All right. Your guy,
Brooks Austin.
Brooks Austin. He's called the film guy, right?
He's the film guy from the Film Network. Also writes for Georgia for Sports Illustrated as well, but very well immersed in the SEC when it comes to breaking things down.
And he broke down the Vanderbilt Alabama film, and he basically came out and said the defensive coordinator, Womack Obama, ran cover one robber, they call it, and wouldn't leave that defense the whole game. And Vanderbilt took advantage of it the whole game, and Alabama never adjusted. Basically, Womack was saying, my guys are better than your guys, and eventually my better guys are going to start winning against your guys.
Right.
Didn't really happen. Here's Austin talking about how South Carolina on offense could maybe take advantage of Alabama's cover one robber that they don't get out of if Bama stays in the same
which we assume they would
defensive scheme. Here's what Austin said about what South Carolina could do to maybe get a little something off of that.
Well, you can certainly assume that their run fits aren't going to be 100% perfect. I think that's one thing we noticed on the film from that Vanderbilt matchup. It's not just that Vanderbilt created movement at the lines of scrimmage or gave different looks or made them play the option. It's the fact that Alabama was putting multiple defenders in a singular offensive gap multiple times throughout that football game where I'm stopping the film. And I know it's easy to do this, but I'm stopping the film, and I'm seeing three Alabama defenders stacked amongst each other on the defensive alignment. That's not ever going to be good, right? We got 5 gaps to cover as a defense, sometimes 6, 3 on the left, 3 on the right, right? A gaps on both sides, B gaps on both sides, C gaps on both sides. If we got 3 defenders in one of those gaps, multiples of those gaps are wide open, right, and allowing for us to be gashed in the run game. That's something that I've noticed over and over again for Alabama. Their run fits just aren't exactly perfect, and that's due to preparation, right? That's due to not seeing things correctly in the run game. So that's something Dow can certainly attack. I will say this about what I've noticed from Dow this year as a coordinator. It's very clear to me that he is being tasked with protecting a quarterback that is very, very turnover prone. I have really liked what I've seen from Lenoris. I think the future is extremely promising, but you'd have to be remiss looking at that tape from Lenoris this year and say that, oh, he's not one play away from a turnover at all times. He's one play away from a sack fumble. He's one play away from an interception and throwing it to the other team, I feel like, on a down-to-down basis. And as a coordinator, man, that makes my job really, really hard. And I know it's easy to look at last week's performance and say, man, Dow's struggling right now. Where I look at the film and I say, all right, I see what he's trying to do. He's very much so trying to protect the quarterback right now.
And we'll get to that in the next segment. We talk about South Carolina,
sure.
Austin's thoughts on Sellers and Loggins. Alabama's run defense, Vanderbilt 12 of 18 on third down last week, and some of that was in the run game, getting their conversions against Alabama. South Carolina, last time I checked, Tyler, they like to run the ball with their quarterback.
That's about 70% of the offense.
And hopefully Rocket Sanders is healthy as well.
Well, the biggest thing for me watching last week when it did come to passing the ball, Diego Pavia bought time because they were putting pressure on him, but he was able to flush the pocket, allow his receivers downfield to get themselves open, make some key plays there. Didn't take a lot of deep shots, kept everything pretty much in the middle range, but they were very effective against that Alabama defense, doing that a lot on third down. So Lenore Sellers is going to have to make some big plays today if South Carolina wants to walk out of Tuscaloosa with the win.
And we will talk more Gamecocks next as we go into the offense, defense, and special teams of Carolina. That is next on Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Ortho. Admission control today. Tyler Head, David Dare, Terry Ford on the game. I love Clayton White. Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by Lex Med Ortho, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, David Dare from Mission Control this morning. When we're done, the SEC report will take over. Then the network pregame with Chris Miller and the crew up till kickoff at noon with Todd and Tommy in Tuscaloosa, South Carolina, a 21.5-point dog to Alabama. Clayton's great. Hey, this is what you signed up for, dude.
Time to strap up the chin strap and get out there and go.
I love it. You want to steal off somebody's highlight tape? Do your job.
You control your destiny on this one.
And then, of course, we heard Dow Loggins, offensive coordinator. What happens when you don't have explosive plays? Basically, now you're saying, okay, we've got to be very precise, and we've got to methodically go down the field with long drives and cash in touchdowns. And it makes your life much more difficult. One play, Tyler, in the Ole Miss game for South Carolina, plus 20 yards, that was a Sellers run.
Yeah, and when you look back at what Vanderbilt and Georgia did over the last 6 quarters of that Vanderbilt defense, explosive play after explosive play, both through the ground and in the air as well. So South Carolina's got to hit those today if they want any chance of winning.
All right, Gamecocks obviously this year 3-2, 1-2 in the SEC. Billy Connolly's SP plus 31st overall. Number 57 on offense, though. The defense is 22nd in the nation in efficiency. Special teams at 50. Basically, it's a wash with these defenses if you look at the efficiency rankings. The difference is Alabama's offense is number 1 in America. South Carolina's is kind of in the middle of the pack.
Yeah. South Carolina's got a good defense. They just don't have an offense that can supplement what they do on defense every single time, which is what we ran into last week. Is holding Ole Miss to only 27 points. That's actually kind of respectable. You shouldn't have an offense that could capitalize on some of those stops and get points.
The difference, we say this term so much, we're all throwing up in our mouth explosive plays. Ole Miss had explosive plays.
Yep.
South Carolina didn't, and South Carolina had turnovers, lost, and gave up the ball on downs. So, the defense held up about as good as it could in the situation it was put in on Saturday.
Yeah, and at some point, especially when you're on the field time and time again, your offense isn't executing, your defense is going to get tired, and a team like Alabama is going to be able to exploit that today if you don't have some points on offense.
And we heard from our buddy Austin, the film guy, last segment, about Alabama's defensive run fits and how they line up and their gap responsibility. There's stuff there in the run game for South Carolina.
There certainly is. They're not good at matching personnel, and looking back at what Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator of Vanderbilt, did last week, a lot of that pre-snap motion, which is something that Dow Loggins likes to do to kind of give you that sense of what Alabama's going to line up in and taking advantage of that. So we'll see if South Carolina can have the same kind of success against Alabama's defense like Vandy had last week.
And that's if you don't follow this kind of stuff. The motion... One of the things motion does, it tells you what the defense is doing. Are they in zone? Are they in man?
Alabama's heavy man.
Heavy man. So if you watch a football game and you see the wide receiver go in motion and you see the DB following him, they're in man. If no one follows him, they're in zone. That's one of the... It's more than one reason. That's one of the reasons, though, you see motion from a lot of offensive coordinators. All right, in this football game, I was going to Lenore Sellers real quick at this point. Lenore Sellers on the season, we went over Jalen Milrose numbers, and obviously Jalen Milrose is a wholly different animal than Lenore Sellers right now. But for Lenore Sellers, from that 10 to 19-yard sweet spot we talked about in the passing game, Sellers is only completing 44% of his passes this year. Down the field, he's only thrown 10 balls over 20 yards.
Hasn't had the time.
Exactly. He's hit 6.
Yeah.
But he's been under pressure on 42% of his dropbacks this year. And he's only hitting 37.5% of his passes under pressure. 0 touchdowns, 3 picks. The pressure affects him. Whether it's whoever's giving up the pressure, for whatever reason you're under pressure, the pressure has been a thing.
Well, and I go back to what Brooks Austin said, when he played that clip a couple minutes ago. You have an inexperienced quarterback. You have an offensive line that's not protecting him very well. So you have an offensive coordinator, Dow Loggins, who has been, criticized plenty at times this year, and rightfully so for a lot of ways, that's trying to do damage control for the offense that he has that doesn't give you a whole lot of upside right now.
Yeah, and so Dow is, like Austin said, is play calling in one aspect to protect his young quarterback from chaos and problems. Real quick, some numbers on South Carolina. They are the second most penalized team in the SEC. They're 15th in penalties. 12th in red zone offense, 6th in red zone defense, last in sacks given up, and 3rd in sacks defensively. 13th in third down conversions, a +2 in turnover margin. Basically, that tells you defense is above average to good, offense below average to struggling.
Yep.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've seen that through a lot of games so far this year. They've shown moments, obviously, on offense, what they were able to do against LSU at times, but you need more consistency if you're going to beat a team like Alabama, because you're going to have to win a track meet today.
Special teams-wise, Kai Kroger, second in the SEC in average yards per kick. Kick coverage unit, second in the SEC. Alex Herrera's hit 7 of his 10 kicks. We've talked about this. Since the LSU miss, he's 1 for 2.
Yep.
And so we're on Alex Herrera.
I'm not feeling the most confident, especially when you're missing kicks under 40 yards, which as a college kicker, you should be making those. So he hasn't won me over yet at kicker.
All right, 2 quick matchups. USC run game against the Alabama run defense, self-explanatory. You need a healthy Rocket Sanders. Lenore Sellers got to make plays with his legs later on today. The other matchup, the strength of South Carolina's football team, Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart off the edge. Mm-hmm. They're going up against the tackles of Alabama, Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett. Proctor is almost perfect this year.
Yeah.
His grade is 92.5. He's given up 0 pressures and 0 sacks all year.
Yeah.
So Josiah Thompson can watch the Caden Proctor model because Proctor struggled like nobody's business the first half of last year.
Sure.
And now he's one of the best tackles in college football.
Yeah, he was a 5-star kid, much like Josiah Thompson, with a lot of upside and a lot of potential going forward. And this Alabama offensive line, really the story of this team, because last year they were god-awful. They were the worst in the SEC in terms of sacks allowed. They've only given up 8 through 5 games so far this year, so a striking difference from where they were a season ago, that it is going to test this pass rush from South Carolina.
Flip side, this is the one to go after. Elijah Pritchett, a 55% pass blocking grade, has given up 10 pressures this year. Again, is he going to get help? Do you have to chip with a back? Do you have to keep a tight end in? Whoever is lined up across from Pritchett, whether it's going to be Stewart or is it going to be Kennard, this is the guy to attack.
South Carolina's pass rush is what can keep them in this game. If they are effective enough and keep Jalen Monroe under pressure, force them making mistakes, they can have a chance today, but they got to get home on these pass rushes.
All right, up next, we'll get thoughts from Preston Thorne, former Gamecock member of our early game morning show here on 107.5 The Game. What he is running through his head about this game later on today with South Carolina and Bama. We go till almost 9 o'clock. Network pregame at 9, kickoff at noon. Carolina and the Tide from Tuscaloosa right here on 107.5 The Game and our sister station 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. Obviously, a noon kickoff. South Carolina, Alabama, and Tuscaloosa, Bama, 21.5-point favorites. The big game in the SEC, there's two games with ranked teams going up against each other. Number 1, Texas. Number 16, Oklahoma. Red River rivalry. It feels like Texas, they are a 15-point favorite. Oklahoma can't score. Texas can score a lot.
Yep.
Oklahoma's defense is really good. Texas's defense is not as good as Oklahoma's, but it's a heck of a lot better than the Oklahoma offense.
Yeah, Oklahoma's struggling a lot. They've obviously made the change of quarterback going from Jackson Arnold to Michael Hawkins, but they still have the worst offense overall in the SEC, and I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with Texas. Quinn Ewers comes back today. Arch Manning obviously did a really good job kind of mending the gap for the past couple weeks, but Ewers is, as much as maybe the people in Texas want Arch Manning to be the guy, Ewers is still going to be the guy. Obviously, projected first-round draft pick, has a shot at the Heisman Trophy this year, and that offense should pick up right where it left off when he got injured a few weeks ago.
Feels like Texas should roll Oklahoma pretty easy today.
But this game, in the past 10 years, the lower-ranked team has won 5 times.
Yeah, so Oklahoma's got to force some turnovers. Texas has got to be flat, and the football gods have to smile on the Sooners.
Oklahoma has to turn this into a bar brawl and make it a low-scoring game.
It's got to be a rock fight.
Yeah.
Number 9, Ole Miss goes to number 13, LSU. I said this to you yesterday. Anything can happen here, and I wouldn't be surprised. I think LSU wins at home against Ole Miss. Something about Death Valley at night. LSU's playing better on defense. They have weapons on offense. I know Ole Miss smacked around South Carolina pretty good last Saturday. But until Ole Miss can go win a game like this, I have questions on the Rebels.
Ole Miss, I think, is the only team in the SEC that's not had a bye week so far this year. LSU's not only off of a bye week, they played South Alabama the week before that and smacked them around pretty good. So they have not really had a lot of physical tests these past couple weeks. They're refreshed. It's in Death Valley at night. I got LSU in this one.
Ole Miss is favored by 3.5, by the way.
I take the LSU.
Yeah, top 25, the marquee game. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Oregon in Eugene. I just kind of said a lot about Ole Miss. Look, Oregon is really good at home. Oregon is uber talented. But Oregon doesn't win this game typically over the last, decade? This is a game Oregon would lose. Ohio State coming in with on paper, a lot of dudes.
We're finally going to see if the Dan Lanning influence of physicality on defense is really up to par with what needs to be in the Big Ten because Ohio State can play physical defense. We'll see if Oregon can match them tonight. Biggest stat for this game, Big Ten teams that have traveled 2 or more time zones this year, 1 and 8. And Ohio State traveling 2 time zones to the West Coast, taking on Oregon tonight.
Ohio State's beaten no one by 100 every game, and Oregon hasn't really made you go wow watching them. So this is going to be an interesting game.
We're going to learn a lot about these two teams and who sets themselves apart as the dominant leader of the Big Ten so far. And, hey, these two teams could still play each other 2 more times this year for all we know.
Right. And I feel like until Oregon shows me different, I'll take Ohio State. Because, again, is Michigan playing Ohio State today?
No.
Is Ohio State playing the college football playoff today?
No.
Those are the games Ryan Day has.
I was going to say, they handle their business in all those other games, no problem.
But it wouldn't surprise us if Oregon walked off the field with a double.
No, it wouldn't. It's going to be a fun game.
All right, last night, number 16, Utah, they rolled into Arizona State. Cam Rising was the starting quarterback. That's usually the formula for a Utes victory. Rising throws 3 picks. Arizona State. Ken Dillingham is 17 years old, the head coach in his second year.
He's younger than Ryan Williams.
Sun Devils are 5-1 and 3-1 in the Big 12.
They got something cooking there. The Big 12 is wide open this year, and Arizona State wasn't a team that a lot of people were talking about being in the mix for that, but with how wide open this conference is, they very well could maybe be a dark horse for the college football playoff if they keep playing like this.
How funny would that be? Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Ortho. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, David Derrick smacking the controls for us this morning. We'll come back. Our keys to victory for South Carolina against Alabama. Also, we'll talk to our buddy Jack Veltri from Gamecock Central, get his thoughts. He is in Tuscaloosa, by the way.
Yes, he is.
So we'll do that next here on Gamecocks Game Day on 107.5 The Game. Gamecocks Game Day, sponsored by LexMed Ortho. We're at the admission control this morning at the studios of 107.5 The Game, because for some reason O'Hara's didn't want us there at 7.
No, I think they would have kicked us out because we would have had to have broken in to get there this early.
I'd like to be the person O'Hara's. You got to be there at 6, between 6 and 6:30 for a bunch of radio goofs.
So I guess we could have done their bakery down the block there,
which is really good.
Early.
Those bagels are stupid. All right, so we'll be at O'Hara's for the viewing party later today, though, at noon.
Hey, we're 1-0.
Yes, we are this year. Undefeated, boss.
That's right.
Got a win streak. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Dave Adair at Mission Control. Keys to victory. Shane hit one. Do not commit lots of self-inflicted wounds to your own body.
Right.
No penalties, no turnovers. And don't get stopped on downs. If you don't think the fake punt's working, call a timeout. All those things, those are keys. Mine real quick, and then we'll get to our buddy Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central. We'll get your keys here in a second too, Tyler. You got to win first and third down on offense. Success rate last week was really good on first down for South Carolina. About 50% success rate. Best of the season. Problem was they fumbled all over themselves on second and third down. Again, can't turn the ball over, cut down the penalties. You got to get some explosive plays because Alabama's going to get theirs.
Yep.
You got to get explosive plays in this football game on offense. And here's one we didn't talk about, and I've been saving it. You got to have a healthy Rocket Sanders.
Oh, totally.
If you don't have a healthy Rocket Sanders, no offense, Oscar Attaway and the rest of those backs.
Sure.
You got to have a healthy Rocket Sanders, and obviously your O-line can't get run over.
Yeah. Biggest thing you got to contain Ryan Williams. He's going to make plays. He's going to be explosive. He's going to score all of his touchdowns on 20-plus yard plays. So you got to be able to lock him down again. O'Donnell Fortune going to be matched up with him as the best, cover corner that South Carolina has. How can you do today? That's going to be a big key. You got to get turnovers and get points off those turnovers. I look at the two games where we've seen Alabama struggle quite a bit. South Florida earlier on this year, they forced a lot of turnovers. They only got 7 points off those turnovers last week. Vanderbilt forces 2 turnovers. You have the 1 pick six, and then you have the strip sack at the end of the game. 14 total points off turnovers. Obviously pretty big when you talk about a 5-point win for the Commodores last week. So that's a big key for South Carolina today. And Sellers has to have a career day today. You look at the quarterbacks that beat Alabama, first-round draft picks, Heisman Trophy winners, all that kind of stuff. Then you also have Diego Pavia or Zach Calzada back in 2001 with Texas A&M. Those guys had career days. Mm-hmm. That's what Sellers is going to have to do if they're going to win today in Tuscaloosa.
Now, let's get Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, in here. Hey, Bob, how's Tuscaloosa?
Hey, guys, how's it going? It's, when I got the call, I'm like, it's 7:30 in the morning. What are they calling me for? And
that 1 hour time difference, man.
I know, man. But you know what? I made it here safely with my GC crew, and
the tire held up this time.
Oh yeah, my tire did.
Fantastic.
It's because I'm going to the better school in Alabama. So,
not that Cal College on the plains, right?
Yeah. Not that disgrace of a school. But anyway, I'm doing good, and we're ready to roll this morning.
All right, Jack Veltri, what are your keys to South Carolina staying in this game or possibly winning it later today?
Well, I think it's a lot of what you guys said too. I think number one, like Terry said, Rocket Sanders has got to be healthy. That's number one for sure. I mean, look, you can try to win with a running back by committee type deal, but none of those guys are Rocket Sanders. You didn't pay those guys like you did Rocket Sanders with NIL and stuff. So that's number one. I think number two, you got to try to contain Jalen Milroe a little bit, but at the same time, you got to contain those other playmakers like Ryan Williams. Jam Miller's another good one. Justice Haynes, Jeremy Bernard. They have a lot of talented players on that offense. And then I think a little bit of what they need to do for South Carolina's offense is, look, Vanderbilt, let's be real, they laid the blueprint of what you need to do. Diego Pavia and Lenora Sellers, I like to think they're similar in some ways, big physical quarterbacks. Can Sellers kind of play that same style of football today against an Alabama defense that really hasn't looked good in the last 6 quarters? It's very much possible, but we're going to have to see. There's so many other keys, but those will probably be my main few, that if South Carolina's going to win today, those things probably need to happen.
Jack, we've talked a lot this week about Shane Beamer's aggressiveness last week against Ole Miss, which was detrimental right from the jump with that failed fake punt on the early 4th down there. To beat a team like Alabama, you're going to have to be aggressive. Is last week going to make him apprehensive, or is he going to have to keep his foot to the gas on those kind of decisions once again today?
Well, it's not even – okay, here's the thing. I've thought about it more. It's not even the fact that he was aggressive that's the issue. It's the not thinking about your decisions in the moment that's the issue. Like, if he thought about the fake punt and taking a timeout like he should have, different story. It's just things like that where you need to have a thought process of, okay, are we getting the right formation? Are we getting to the ball quick enough? Are we, lined up in the right way? There's so many different things that he has to think about. I don't disagree with the fact that he probably does need to be aggressive today, but if you're going to do it, make sure it's done properly, basically, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and that's the other part of this is the decision making, being aggressive. Like going for it on 4th and 1. I get it. Whether I agree with that or I would have done it doesn't matter. I get going for it 4th and 1, but line up your offense and go for it on 4th and 1, Jack. Don't try the fake punt by snapping it to Maurice Brown.
No, absolutely. I totally disagree with. Look, as soon as they didn't get the right look, should have called a timeout. I think they probably would have ran the punt unit back on the field just to punt, actually. But, it should have just been put your offense out there, go no huddle real quick, line up to the ball, and just get ready to go. It's all it takes is Rocket Sanders, Oscar Adaway, Lenore Sellers, Robbie Ashford, literally anyone, Taka Hemingway even. Put someone out there in the backfield and have them go for 1 yard. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be even competing right now. That's the problem I have.
Last one for you here, Jack. Got about a minute. Obviously, we know how explosive this Alabama offense is. They're going to score their points today. Who's the most important player on South Carolina's defense? Is it one of the guys at edge and Carnard and Stewart? Is it O.D. Fortune matching up with Ryan Williams? Is it one of these linebackers trying to contain the run? Like who needs to stand out today for South Carolina on defense?
Yeah, I think, originally I would have said O.D. Fortune locking up Ryan Williams, but he's just one factor of the game. The biggest factor in this game is, are you going to be able to contain Jalen Milroe? And I think these linebackers, when Milroe tries to run, they need to be there to stuff it up. So, look, I think the D-line is going to do its job. I think the corners are going to play very well. Let's just see what the linebackers can do, because we know they can play well, but you got to be able to contain Milroe in the run game if he tries to run.
Jack Velcher, Gamecock Central. Go back to sleep, man. We appreciate you, bud.
Yeah, go back to sleep. I'll see you guys later.
All right,
See you, man.
We'll see you. SEC Report is next. Then Chris Miller in the pregame show from the network. Kickoff at noon here on the game in Columbia and in Myrtle Beach. South Carolina, Alabama. Bama's a 21.5-point favorite. It doesn't feel good, but usually when we all feel this way, South Carolina surprises us and comes up with a heck of a performance.
They got us right where they want us.
David Ayer, nice work. Tyler, good job. Terry Ford, Gamecocks Game Day. Thanks for hanging out with us. SEC Report is next here on 107.5 The Game.